Hey guys, Jarretman here, back, more 500 Zoom. Two tabling again this time. Table 1, King 10 offsuit. I think it's slightly too loose to ISO this. And we could potentially lead the flop here. We could develop a bunch of leads in these kind of weird limp spots, but I will bet this turn. And we'll take whatever small amount of showdown value that we have. So he doesn't have very much king queen. I mean, it depends on how he's playing his limping strategy, but he has way more king queen than me. I'm just gonna fold. Table 1 is the spot where we basically just want to be checking range. And ace-king having the king of spades, even versus the half-pot sizing, we will continue. Potentially, we could even continue as a check raise, but I kind of like a check call. Especially if he's stabbing hands like ace-jack, ace-queen, king-queen, king-jack, king-10 on the flop. It's nice to reverse those bluffs. It's getting a little close now on the turn. And we roll our low number. Okay. I think ace king does have to continue some of the time there. Ace 10 offsuit will be a 3-bet and a mix between 3-betting and calling. So I think ace 10, no backdoor flush draw, wants to mostly check this flop, if not pure check it. And my strategy in this spot will be a mixed strategy between having some checks and having some medium-sized bets, like some half pot to 66% size, somewhere around there. I don't. So you could alternatively just bet 1/3 with range here, but I don't think you capture your fair share of the EV by doing that. I think you give up too much EV. And again, ace 10 having no diamond is going to be mostly a check, if not a pure check again. I think, ace queen, ace king, king queen, that still has 2 overs versus a jack, make much better bluffs on the turn. Or, an ace 10 that has a diamond blocker that blocks his continuing range and also can bluff some diamond rivers. And versus the 75% sizing, we can fold ace 10 here. So like I explained a couple of videos ago, I won't be using the HUD anymore in these videos. I will be using it outside the videos. I just think it's a little distracting and it's kind of just white noise for these videos. Don't think it's necessary at all. Don't think it adds any value, as someone might say. I like betting the turn sometimes, actually, with the ace jack here. Yeah. I think he has a lot of hands that are just in a very tough spot. These monotone boards are extremely difficult to play as the out of position player. Personally, I hate them very much. And when I bet the flop small here, he just takes such a wide range to the turn. But now on the river, I am going to check back and lose. Ace-9 suited is close. Small blind versus hijack. I'm just going to fold it. Bonk 30 is a good reg, and you know these marginal hands become less attractive when you're playing against better opponents. Gonna be check raising the flop here at a decent frequency with ace-3 of spades, the backdoor flush draw blocking ace-queen, blocking ace-king, blocking ace-queen, blocking aces. Versus the large sizing, we'll do less check raising, obviously, but we get a 68. Yeah, I'm gonna go for the check raise. Obviously, our main value pusher is gonna be ace-queen, but with these positions, we actually have jacks and tens at decent frequency. And versus min raise size, we have all the offsuited broadways. Not that we want to be check raising them that much. That's a pretty bad card for what we're repping. We're basically just repping, you know, ace queen, which just decreased in value a lot. Ace queen, queen 9, and then jacks and tens. Tens we just lost a combo of, and ace queen just significantly decreased in value. Queen 9 significantly decreased in value. He has way more king 10, jack 10 than us because we wouldn't check raise those as much versus the large size. And I'm just gonna go for the check fold here. Ace queen off a mix between calling and 3-betting on the button. It's always better if you have some weaker players behind you when you call on the button. Gives you a little bit more of an incentive to call, I think, in my mind. However, if they have those weaker players could also have cold calling ranges. I don't really want to use a large size here on table 1, given that it's 4 ways. Like, the threshold for a value bet goes up. The threshold for, you know, a good hand is much higher 4 ways than it is heads up. So like ace queen is a really strong hand heads up. 4 ways, it's not that strong. And versus the weaker player, I don't want to overbet. I think it's too thin. I think it's too thin given that flop was 4 ways, and I just want to bet normal. I just want to get paid by every single ace that's worse than mine. Which I think he can have too much of. Weaker players or recreational players in general tend to overvalue ace-x hands pre-flop, and their ranges tend to be weighted towards more ace-x hands than they should be. So their distribution tends to be ace-x heavy, is what I'm trying to say. And he can have a lot of ace-x here. I could potentially shove the river, but again, just trying to get called by every ace-x. If I had pocket 10s or pocket 6s, then I would shove the river. Not blocking his ace-x is a thing, I guess. If we bet too big, we isolate ourselves, is what I'm trying to say. Slightly too thin to jam the river with ace-queen here, I think. We want him to call us with ace 5. Or maybe jack 10, who knows. Interesting he checks this turn. I think this turn wants to be bet very frequently as the big blind. Very, very, very frequently. And we're just going to check it down. I'm curious to see what he has, which didn't bet the turn. Yeah, that's interesting to me. I mean, let me take that back. I don't think it's a range bet spot for him, but definitely a very frequent bet. Maybe he thinks I'm a station, which maybe I am. I've been called sticky before. Versus like the 1/3, 1/4 sizing with pocket 3s, we're gonna peel. Pocket 5s might do some check raising on the flop, but pocket 3s I don't think wants to do much check raising. And we have an easy fold down with the pocket 3s. Queen 9 off is close versus 3x. If I remember correctly, this guy's opening slightly tighter from the button, so I'm just going to fold the Queen 9. I mean, which he should be opening. I'm not saying he's not opening the proper ranges. Maybe those are the proper ranges for 3x. But if I remember correctly, he was opening even slightly tighter than the proper ranges. I could consider calling the 10-8 suited with the weaker player and the big blind there. I just kind of instinctively snap folded. Ace jack cutoff versus small blind is kind of close. And he uses a slightly larger sizing. I'm going to go for a 4-bet or a fold here. Okay, we get a 4-bet. And unfortunate. Ace jack off just versus the small blind range when we open cutoff. It's just not quite strong enough to continue as a call. It's close, right? Like it's near the bottom. If there was a hand that we're gonna continue with, like at the bottom, this would be it. Okay, we roll a 4-bet here on table 1. Jack's gonna be mostly a call for me, like 75% a call, 25% a 4-bet. When we're in position, like I said, we want to be using a polarized 4-betting strategy, but jacks gets mixed in there. And versus the pot size bet on table 2, no reason to raise, and we have to continue with the jacks here. We're not loving it once we face the jam, but we have to continue. Could maybe have some leads on that 7, but I don't think it'll gain you that much EV. So obviously I'd prefer to be doing this off video, but I'm just gonna take a note here. The reason I'm taking a note is that you'll see a lot of preflop solutions pure call aces in that spot. Like they'll never 4-bet jam it, given that ranges are so wide and how polar the button is, and how wide the small blind needs to defend out of position with calls, it'll trap aces pure to protect its range. And if he's jamming the aces here, then his range becomes weaker when he calls and also stronger when he jams. So just a small little note there. You'll see some pre-flop solutions where aces maybe calls half the time here, jams 25% of the time. It's not that big of a deal. It's just a small little note in the future that you can look for in your opponents, just to see, okay, when you can discount aces from his range when he just calls the small blind versus the 4-bet, is what I'm trying to say, and vice versa. Jack 8 offsuit, gonna mix some 3-bets here. Yeah. So I like to play these ace-high boards as a bet 1/3 or check. Again, you can do a lot of things. A lot of things here. On the turn, we're going to obviously be betting a bit more polar. We have a very wide range after we bet the flop. Like, we're checking a decent amount, but we're still betting a lot. And I think this is one of our worst hands to bluff the river with, unfortunately. We don't really block too many ace-x, like ace-jack offsuit. Might even be folding pre-flop some of the time, or 4-betting. And we just block all of his folds. We block his entire folding range, like Jack X, Jack 10 of diamonds, 9-8 of diamonds, Jack 9 of diamonds. We block just none of his value and all of his folds, so just a really bad bluff. Four betting here, table 2. I kind of like squeezing here. Obviously we could call, but I like putting the squeeze in. We can call versus 4-bets, and yeah, it's a nice hand to mix sometimes with squeezing. If I had a player in the blinds that I really wanted to also let into the pot, we could consider calling more pre-flop. And versus the 4-bet, we just have to call, especially versus that somewhat smaller sizing. Uh, 7-3 versus 2.3 is going to be a call for the ranges I'm playing. 8s with the diamond, not doing any folding on the flop. We're actually, versus the 1/4 sizing, we're not doing much folding at all. Our range has a lot of high value hands, and the hands that we are folding are like, king, queen of hearts would fold the flop maybe, or like king, jack of hearts would fold the flop. But we just have a lot of high equity. Does make sense for him to check the turn sometimes. We have jacks and 10s probably at like full frequency, whereas he might not 4-bet those 100% of the time pre. Depends how he's playing his strategy with the weaker player in between. And I don't think the small bet for protection with 8s is a thing here, especially if you know the river is going to be an 8. If you know what the river is going to be, you should always check it back. Just kidding. I was just kidding. I was kidding. You should bet fold. You should just fold the turn. Fold at a turn. That's just the cooler. Unlucky river. I guess I can take some comfort in the fact that I'm probably going to get stacked no matter what that hand. If I just call pre, I float the flop, he checks the turn, I check it back, river 8, he bets, I jam, he calls. This isn't good poker logic to think about, like would I have gotten stacked if I played it different. It's just a fun thing sometimes. This texture will have a decent amount of checkbacks, but we also will have some larger bets. And then on the turn, I think we want to mix some overbets in here, but I'm not exactly sure at what frequency, and I usually just play these as a normal bet or check spot. Like if I had an 8 here, just a naked 8, am I really going to overbet it? Maybe I should, but I think mostly I'm playing these spots as if I have an 8 or a 3, I'm just going to bet the turn for this sizing. That's an interesting river, as I think it gives us enough showdown value to check back. I'm not expecting to win very often, but we have lots of other air bluff hands that have 0 showdown value and better blockers. Yeah, okay. King 7 offsuit versus 3x is a pure fold. We're going to wrap this one up soon. I'm just going to do a bit of a shorter video. I feel like some of my videos that I've been putting out are just way too long. Also, the action seems to be dying off a little bit. And it's pretty late and I'm pretty tired. Not a good combination for poker playing. And I'm running set under set, so that's a big consideration as well. I like betting sometimes here on table 1. When we have a hand like 5-3, it's it benefits from a lot of protection betting the flop. And we will get check raise very frequently, but we get to continue versus a check raise. I think this hand class I was gonna say, I think this hand class just mainly checks down the river. On a river spade, it's interesting. We get our low number, like the lowest number possible, so I'm just gonna check. We can't just always bluff here. And interesting that he checks the turn. I'm kind of... This turn should be a very, very high frequency bet from him, if not just betting his entire range for like the small size. So I'm kind of suspicious when he checks the turn. Very suspicious when he checks the turn, actually. I'm just going to fold the river and not even think about it. Yeah, I'm very comfortable folding the river in that spot with 5-3. Not only do I think we're indifferent at equilibrium, I think that... Yeah, I think that it's a little suspicious when he doesn't bet the turn there. Versus half pot, we're going to float the 2-6 of spades and raise it some of the time here. 6-5 suited will be a continue versus small blind versus the big blind 3-bet. And 6-2 without any straight draws. Maybe a very, like a 10% continue here for me. Mostly just a fold though. Okay. And with just absolutely nothing going on for us, we can fold the flop there on table 2. This texture here actually looks better for him than it is. It looks better in the sense that your mind thinks, oh, 3-bet pot, oh, the 3-better just crushes on ace king X or on king X, or just, you know, he has all the ace king, you don't. That's true. But in this case, he has this huge portion of just junk, just absolute garbage, no equity hands, like 10-4 of hearts, or jack 6 offsuit, or sorry, not jack, queen 6 offsuit. Just total junk that have no equity on this board. So he's not crushing it. He might still have a polarity advantage in that he has the nutted combos and you don't, but his overall range might not even have like an equity advantage in this spot, or if it does, it's like a very small equity advantage. Ace jack, hijack versus button. Yeah, I think we'll peel versus that size. I don't think ace jack is a no backdoor flush draw as a hand class that wants to check raise this type of texture. And I don't think we need to bluff the river with ace jack here. We block ace 5 of clubs, which is a thing. So if I did bet, I'd want to bet for like an overbet size, blocking his more nutted hands, but I think we don't need to. And ace 8 suited, similar to the ace 9 suited in that it's close. But versus hijack, we just want to play tight. Small blind versus hijack. We still have the big blind left behind us. We're guaranteed to be out of position. He's opening a relatively tight range. And yeah, he is a worse ace high. Seems reasonable. Seems very reasonable to me. So yeah, this ace king 7 board looks better than it is what I'm trying to say. Even though we never have aces, even though we never have kings, even though we never have ace king, and even though our 7s is discounted slightly because we would 4-bet sometimes, it's this flop was 3 ways and he pots it. He's been playing pretty snug. I don't like to do this on video, but I'm just gonna make the very nitty tight fold here. We don't really fold very much versus the 1-4 sizing on this board. Like, at all, which is... we have some hands, of course, that still need to fold, but I think this one is not one of them. I think we have to peel all our ace highs. I prefer squeezing the king 10 suited here, especially with the small blind calling range. Similar to that hand with the ace jack, ace high is just good enough to, you could make an argument maybe you want to exploitatively bet the turn as they're just not defending enough. You get some fold equity with hands that would never put more money into the pot. And maybe he would even fold a hand like ace 8 if I had bet the turn. I don't know, right? So yeah, this hand here with the king jack. Let me just make sure that it was actually 3 ways on the flop and I'm not crazy. Because if it wasn't 3 ways, I just made a really bad fold. I get my low, I'm going to pause this for a sec. I get my low number cutoff versus button. I'm not going to be continuing all the king queen offsuit here. I will be continuing some of it. Some of it as a 4-bet and some of it as a call, maybe like 25% 4-bet, 25% call, 50% fold. That seems pretty reasonable to me. King Queen offsuit intuitively plays a bit better as a 4-bet bluff than it does as a call on that spot. If you wanted to like shift some of your ranges around to have King Queen off as a pure 4-bet, and sorry, not a pure 4-bet, but like a 4-bet or fold, I think that would be very reasonable as well. A board we're doing a lot of checking with our range, a lot of checking with this hand as well, but we get our high number. And it's yeah, it's a spot, again, a lot of these single raise pot flop spots where you have a lot of options. You could, a lot of different strategies you can employ. I tend to lean towards the simpler the strategy, the better. And therefore, I try to find the simplest strategy that collects the most EV compared to like a perfect mix strategy. So you kind of have to weigh simplicity with capturing the EV from the pot. I don't think this hand class wants to do any check raising on table 1. If we had like 10-6 of hearts, maybe we'd want to do some more check raising than the Jack 10. I could be wrong though. He did bet the small size. It's just this texture really sucks for us. Really, really sucks for us. We don't, even versus the small size, we don't get to check raise that much here. And I definitely like block betting for the small size on table 1. This is like the epitome of a block bet hand, where if we check and he bets, we're calling anyways, but he might check back like all the worse hands. Like he's never betting worse for value. If he raises, we can still like call. It's, yeah, it's just a good block bet spot. I forget what I was talking about on the other table. Real high quality play and explains here, guys. Very, very high production quality, very, very high level content here. All right, I'm going to play these last 2 hands, and then I'm going to wrap this video up and get some sleep. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.